Okay, so I have I've met them at close of day, coming with vivid faces, from counter or dusk among gray 18th century houses. I have passed with a nod of the head or polite, meaningless words, or have lingered a while and have politic, meaningless words, and thought before I had done of a mocking tale or a gabe to please a companion around the fire at the club, being certain that they and I but live with where motely is warm. All changes changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. The woman days were spent in ignorant goodwill, her nights in argument until her voice grew swirl. What voice more sweet than hers when young and beautiful she rode to Harry's? This man kept a school and rode our winged horse. The other, his helper and friend, was coming into his force. He might have won fame in the end, so sensitive his nature seemed, so darling and sweet he thought. The other man I have dreamt a drunken, vigorous lot. He had done most bitter wrong to some who are near my heart. Yet I number him in the song. He too has resigned his part in the casual comedy. He too has been changed in his turn, transformed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. Hearts with one purpose alone, though through summer and winter seemed enchanted to a stone, to trouble the living stream, the horses that comes from the road, the rider, the birds that range from the clouds, to tumble in clouds. Minute by minute they change. A shadow of cloud on the stream changes minute by minute. A horse hoof slides on the brim, and a horse plash within. The long-legged moor hen dives, and hens to moor cocks call. Minute by minute they live, the stone in the midst of it all. Too long a sacrifice can make a stone of heart. Oh, when may is suffice, that is heaven's part, our part, to murmur name upon name. As a mother names her child when sleeps at last, has come on limbs that had run wild. What is it but nightfall? No, 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 not night but death. Was it needless death after all? For England may keep faith for all that is done and said, we know their dream, enough to know they dreamed and are dead. And what if excuses of love bewither them till they died? I write it out in a verse, Macduff and McBride, and Conley and Pierce, now in a time to be, wherever green is worn, are changed utterly. A terrible beauty is born. That is a poem that is a mouthful, but that's a poem that was written during the 1916 Easter Rising, a little bit after, and it was written by William Butler Yeats. And this poem was a really big deal because this poem talked a lot about the Easter Rising, and the poem was published separately in 1960 and collected in Michael Roberts and the Dancer in 1921. It commemorates the martyrs of the Easter Rising, which, as I talked about previously in the other video, the Easter Rising was an insurrection against British government in Ireland in 1960, which resulted in the execution of several Irish nationalists whom Yeats knew personally, and Yeats was a writer of this poem. So as you can hear throughout the poem, it's just very sad and very disheartening that these people who fought for their freedom ultimately met a very sad fate, and they ended up dying. And just this firsthand account of this poet that knew these people personally, and to be able to hear that poem it just was very cool to be able to, he was able to commemorate his friends in that way. And then the poem examines the nature of um, her, heroism and its incongruency with everyday life. Although Yeats questions the fanaticism of rebellion and the necessity of their actions, he admires their steadfast determination. He reluctantly celebrates their martyrdom with the repeated line, "A terrible beauty is born," mostly written in an epic type of poem. The poem contains lines that adds measure to it. Basically includes lines and different types of symbols and stuff to make it more of a emphasis on what actually happened. And I just really think that poem is beautiful, and I really think "A Terrible Beauty is Born" is a great way to put it, because it's a beautiful event that the Irish people are actually fighting for their freedom, and they're fighting for their rights, and they're fighting to just be an independent country. But it was beautiful because that's the beautiful side of it, but it was a terrible beauty because people had to die for it, and people had to, lose their life, and loved ones lost other loved ones. So it's very sad, a very sad thing that happened in history. Then nextly, I want to talk about this letter that was written from a person who was in jail. And then this next letter that I'm going to talk about is from a prisoner who got in prison because of the 1916 Easter Rising. And the letter reads, "I have your letters of third also, Mother, Sue, and card, and from Teresa. Claire and Sue, I got the Purcells all right. Two from home and Martin's. I note what you say Reed Joker, O'Connell. It's all a force from the beginning to end. I have not been to London yet, but expect to go visiting any day. The weather seems to be as bad with you as it is here. What way have the military command used hay and straw? Is it the same as last year? They have first call on surpluses over growers' owns requirement. You might send me on some tobacco and Bangdong cigarettes. Sue can get the latter. You may order a coat, vest, and pooties, as I think the appeal has very, very little bearings." So that's the letter. His name was Edmund, and his sister name was Marie. I was going to try to pronounce the last name, but I think I'm going to butcher it, so I'm not even going to try to pronounce the last name. But it's just very cool seeing that letter, and it's a first-hand account because he had been arrested after the Easter Rising of 1960, and he was spending his time in a Wakefield prison. And this letter was basically sent out to asking his sister and his family to send him stuff like tobacco and coats and vests and stuff like that. And it just really shows, like, even though leaders who started the Easter Rising, they were killed and stuff like that, it was still people who was in prison for maybe fighting with the Irish Volunteers or the IRB or anything, or any of those groups like that. The people who was fighting, they also might have gotten in prison. And this is just a first-hand account of a brother and a sister, and the brother is just sitting in jail because he tried to stand up for what he thought was the right thing to do, which was to fight for Irish independence. Okay, 1 second. Okay, and then the next letter I'm going to talk about, is it's a letter from James Joseph Walsh to John Quinn. And this letter was from the 29th of June, 1923. And the letter reads, Not long after his death, you and I saw each other, one of the rare times that I'm sorry to say we met. For I wish it was oftener. I think at Madison Square Garden, in the midst of the talk by the late Burke Cochran, God rest his soul, and the conversation turned to Sir Roger Casement. So, this letter is important because he's communicating that he's sorry for his loss, and now they're discussing the controversial Casement journeys journals, which were journals of Sir Roger Casement, and Sir Roger Casement was a big part of the 1916 Easter Rising. So Walsh was an Irish-American physician and an author living in New York, and John Quinn was a lawyer in New York and the son of an Irish immigrant who maintained close ties with Ireland during his life through his portage of the arts. And in this letter, Walsh writes to Quinn to tell him he has seen the sections of controversial Casement journals, and these were the emphasis Black Diaries, alleged to have been written by Sir Roger Casement and released during the trial of treason in 1916. So this is a very big deal because Sir Roger Casement, he went onto trial, and these are the so-and-so diaries that they used against him in this trial. But it's kind of cool because it's going to help either prove his innocence or not prove his innocence. Okay, and then the next letter that I want to talk about, and personally out of the 3 letters, this is my favorite letter. It's a letter from April 22nd, 1916, and the letter reads, "Volunteers completely deceived. All orders for tomorrow, Sunday, are entirely canceled." And I think this letter is very important because as you can see, this note almost stopped the 1916 Easter Rising, which happened on April 24th. This letter was on April 22nd. So it's crazy because this letter could have literally stopped all of this, and this would have never been an event that happened in history. So it's just crazy that one small letter, if it would have got into the right people's hands, or the right people, or people would have perceived it in a different manner, they could have never even went on with the Easter Rising. And then to expand more and elaborate more on the letter was a handwritten note embossed with McNeill's home address and was delivered to the volunteers in the Kendall area. Eon McNeill was an Irish scholar, nationalist, politician, and the founder of the Irish Volunteers. In 1916, McNeill was led to believe through a forged document that a crackdown on the volunteers by the British authorities was imminent. This prompted him to order a general mobilization for the Easter weekend. When he learned about the truth of the forgery, the seizure of German arms, and the arrest of Roger Casement, he sent the message around the country ordering a general demolition. Followed this up, and he followed this up with an advertisement in the Sunday Independence. He succeeded in delaying the rising by 1 day and confirming its largely to Dublin, and he was subsequently arrested. But by sending this letter out, he was able to confine it to just mainly Dublin and a few other places, but it was mainly, this event in history mainly took place in Dublin. So he wasn't able to stop the rising. He was able to delay it, but ultimately the biggest thing was that forged document almost led to the Easter Rising never happening, because they thought that it was going to be imminent, that defeat would follow them trying to rise up. And then nextly, I have another poem, and this is my favorite poem from the poem, much shorter than the other poem. The other poem was at least took about 5 minutes to read. So this is another poem, and it's a poem from 1916 by Francis Ledwidge. And the poem reads, I heard the poor old woman say, at the break of the day the flowers came, and took my blackbirds from their song, who loved me well through shame and blame. No more from lovely distances their songs shall bless me, mile by mile, nor to white Ashburn call me down, to wear my crown another while. With bended flowers the angles mark for the skylark, the places they lie. From there is little families shall dip their wings first in the sky. And when the first surprise of the fight sweet songs excite, from the far down shall there come blackbirds loud with love, sweet echoes of the singers gone. But in the lovely harsh eve of weeping, I grieved the silent bills. I heard the poor old woman say, and dearie of the little hills. And I just really love this poem, and I really like the way that it sounds. And it's much shorter. It reminds me of how a poem is traditionally understand to be. And what I really think this poem means is it's talking about how it could be like the war is going on, and all of the exciting and fun things in life is not happening no more. But it's sort of bittersweet. It's a bittersweet moment because people are dying, and the volunteers, they have to do an uprising against British authorities. But all of this is happening with the beauty of what's going to happen after this happens. And what's even more beautiful is that those people who was fighting in those battles, they didn't know that any of this will lead to what it led to historically, because they ended up losing. As I said previously, they lost pretty badly too. But I just love this poem because it really sets you into the mood where, like, an old woman, she might wake up and she might always love the smell of roses and hear the birds chirping, but that's not going on because it's a lot of grief, it's a lot of people dying. The country is at war essentially, and the country is really fighting for their independence. So it's no time to, be happy about flowers, be happy about nature. It's time to go to war. It's time to fight for your independence and win your independence. So overall, that's really why I really like that poem. I really like the way that it sounds, and it just reminds me of a traditional poem. So I think these poems and these primary sources are very important because now the Easter Rising happened in 1916. Over 100 years later, someone like me can read this, and I can, voice it to other people and relay the message to other people and help you guys understand. So that's why I think it's very cool to really understand primary sources and look at primary sources, because it's coming directly from a source that was involved or watched the historical event that was at hand.